Welcome to the Muslim Glory podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the smallest Muslim nation in the world, which is the Maldives. And so I actually didn't know that, but I was Googling what is the smallest Muslim nation in the world. And then I actually found out it's the Maldives. And I've obviously done the biggest Muslim nation in the world, which is Indonesia. And then I thought I actually need to research them to find out like what's the story behind the Maldives. And I have to be honest with you, after researching it, I was like so amazed by them. Like I feel like the Maldives is kind of like my favorite country right now. And I mean the stories about them are so impressive. I'm gonna tell you like the most impressive things, and yeah, because there's so many things that are really impressive. And I think everybody needs to know the Maldives also because we got to support the Maldives because I already said this in another video, but basically the Maldives, economically speaking, they could definitely use it that Muslims start visiting more often. And I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to see any Muslims traveling to any other holiday destination apart from the Maldives. Like, I need people to promise to me that you're gonna visit the Maldives. I'm gonna tell you why. Should I tell you now? I'm gonna tell you why. Okay, basically, the Maldives is actually one of the only countries, no, not the only country. Okay, the Maldives banned Israeli passport holders. They banned them after the situation in Gaza. And I am like so impressed with them because they're a very small nation. They're highly dependent on tourism. And so, like, for them to do that, it's like super, like, it shows their values. And the thing I have to tell you is that after they banned them, basically, India, who was one of their biggest clients, started campaigning against the Maldives and saying that people shouldn't go there anymore. And so Indian tourists declined by 37%. And I think that's very terrible for them. But that's why I feel like all Muslims should support them because they're just a really good nation. And I think, if we travel anywhere, we should travel there. And on top of that, there's also been some other issues because of the pandemic. They also had like a lot of like economic backlash, obviously, but also because another thing that really shows their integrity is the fact that they kind of moved away from India as their ally. Like they became more aligned with China recently. And I think one of the reasons is also because of like the Hindu extremism in India, like the current party is not very inclusive towards Muslims. And I think Maldives has a lot of integrity. And so they obviously are not about that. They're always for the Muslims. And so that's why I feel like Maldives is a country we totally need to support. And like basically, if I would go on a holiday, I would go there. Like I never go on a holiday because I have to make content for you guys. But if I did, I would definitely go there. And basically, what did I want to say? Like, I don't get paid to say this. Okay. I also want to say that people always accuse me of like saying, like, oh, you get paid by government, you get paid by this or that. I don't get paid. Like, I literally say this from the bottom of my heart because I care about Muslim countries and I care about Muslim countries who are being oppressed. And I care about Muslim countries like the Maldives also because they are our brothers and sisters and we need to protect them. So basically, I'm telling everyone you have to go to the Maldives, okay? And I'm gonna try to tell you about all the cool things that the Maldives has done. And I hope that after this, you feel like super inspired to go there. That would be like the best outcome. So please listen carefully, okay? Anyways, I have to still introduce myself. My name is Raisa Ghazi. I'm a public speaker internationally. I teach on leadership, blah, 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 blah. I don't really care about that. We need to talk about the Maldives. Okay. Anyways, we're going to talk about first how did Islam come there. So basically, the Maldives is usually it was before that it was a Buddhist country, and I think that's really cool. Like I do like Buddhist countries because I do think that the countries. Well, actually, I've never been to a Buddhist country now that I think of it because I thought Bali was it, but actually Bali is a Hindu country. But in my head, I think Buddhist countries are probably really like good countries. I feel like that. Probably they're very peaceful. But okay, I'm going to tell you the story of how Maldives converted to Islam because it's an incredible story. Okay, you know what happened? So in the 12th century, basically the Maldives was a little bit haunted. Like it was a little bit troubled. The country was a little bit troubled. And then there was this North African seafarer. They don't know if he was Somali or Moroccan, but he actually came and he started reciting Quran to get the evilness and all of the, bad vibes of the country away. So he started reciting Quran. And when he did that, it actually worked. And because of that, the king immediately converted. The entire country immediately converted. And for 900 years, it's been a strictly Muslim country. Until this day, 100% of the people are Muslim. I think that's really cool. And it just shows, like Muslims, they don't come somewhere. They don't force people to convert. They don't do crusades. They don't corrupt their holy books to convert people. Like it's literally just sharing the Quran, sharing knowledge, giving sadaqah, like charity. And that's why people feel very like positive towards Islam. And so that's also what happened in the Maldives. And now they are a Muslim country, like by constitution. I'm so proud of them. Okay. So anyways, that's the story of how they became Muslim. And yeah, what else do I have to tell you? Okay, I have to tell you another thing. I have to tell you something cool because basically the Maldives is like the Federal Reserve of the Indian Ocean. Like at some point, as a currency in the world, people were using cowrie shells, okay? You know cowrie shells. They're like these things that people have in jewelry and sometimes on their clothes. And basically, the Maldives was the place where people were catching those cowrie shells and they were using that as currency. So all the way from China until like the West African coast, they were using this as a currency. And I think that's really cool because like Maldives was like kind of like the central bank when there were no central banks. And on top of that, it's also like a major trade hub in major trade routes. So it's like a hub in major trade routes where ships would go to and they would stay there and maybe get new things or they would fix their boats. And so the Maldives is like pretty amazing because they have a cool history in economics, but still until this day, they're a very important place. For countries like India as well. And that also makes them very vulnerable, because like obviously these routes are very important. And so, knowing all these imperialist powers, they obviously want to control them. And you can see that happen as well right now where, there is a bit of a power struggle about the Maldives. And so I just want people to know, like, we really have to, like, take care of them as well as the smallest Muslim nation and as a place that's actually in a very vulnerable position. It's very important for us to take a look at them and make sure they are okay by, for example, visiting them. Okay, that's the one thing I want to tell you. Okay, another thing, by the way, that they also were, trading with was coconut fiber, and that was like the duct tape of the maritime world because it was holding ships together. And yeah, it was just very sought after in the commodity. And so the Maldives, it wasn't just like a tropical kind of like place, beautiful place. It's had a big economic impact on the world as well. And so that's something we really need to keep in mind. Okay, then another thing, I got like braces since like a week ago. So actually, it kind of hurts sometimes. Anyway, it's not important. Very popular women rulers. I'm going to tell you something really interesting. Okay, you know that the Maldives had a woman ruler, Sultana Khadija, 3 times. I love this story because like, you know what it is? Like in Western world, like if you look at the US, for example, like they have never until this time had a woman ruler because like people generally don't want to have women rulers. Like the Netherlands is the same. They've never had a woman ruler because she would just get disrespected so much, you know? Like women only had rights in these countries for like a few decades anyways. Like let's be really honest, like 30 years, okay? And so Khadija, she was ruling the Maldives in like the 14th century. Is that right? Yeah, the 14th century. And so one thing that's really cool about her story, well, it's not cool, it's actually a little bit sad, is that her husbands two times tried to overthrow her. Like I felt really sad when I read the story. I was like, there's like there's like romantic misery and then there's this, okay? So like Khadija literally was married when she became a queen and her first husband, he tried to overtake her and she actually was overtaken. He became the king. But then she came back and she killed him. Like she assassinated this man. She became the queen again. She also got married again. And then this guy also overthrew her. I feel like, wow, like the heartbreak of this woman, you know? And then he overthrew her, but then she came back again and she also assassinated him. Like, honestly, like she was also a little bit ruthless. Like, she killed her husband twice, like twice. But also, they also kind of deserved it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but like they did steal her crown. Like that is a little bit unfair. But anyways, my point that I'm trying to make is, you know, in the Muslim world, we've had so many Muslim leaders who showed that, you know, women can be leaders, women can be strong. And you know, as Muslims, we don't need to look at any other culture or any other place to get like inspiration or to be empowered. Like in Islam itself and in our civilizations, there have always been women in important places, whether they were, you know, mathematicians, whether they founded universities, whether they were inventors or surgeons, like all over the history of Muslims, we've had incredible Muslim women who were educated and then working and changing the world. And so I think that's amazing. And I think that this also shows like the values of the Muslim world really well. I mean, the story of Khadija is obviously a little bit sad, but regardless, I'm happy that she was the queen. By the way, she was called the Rehendi Khadija, which means Queen Khadija. Okay, because yeah, that's the word. And I understand that nowadays the name Rehendi is actually very popular in what is it called? In the Maldives, because people feel very empowered, like women feel very empowered to use that name. I think that's really cool. So I'm like, yeah, that's a really good example to have in life. But, you know, I hope that doesn't happen, that you actually have to go through all the heartbreak as Khadija had to do. Okay, so that's Khadija. And then, okay, then I have to tell you something else. Did you know that the Portuguese, they came and they tried to colonize the Maldives? They did that. And you know, they also killed the king of the time, the Sultan. His name was, I think it was like Sultan Ali. And basically they killed him. And I just want to remind you, when Muslims conquer other lands, like the Mali Empire, when they conquered the Songhai Empire, they didn't kill the leaders. Okay? As you remember, they didn't kill the leaders. They left them in place. They treated them with respect, but they did conquer the lands. And so that's the difference between Western civilizations. I mean, I don't know if you can call it civilizations, but anyways, Western powers overtaking a country versus Muslim powers overtaking a country. And okay, what happened is they killed the king, and then this guy, his name was, just gonna check it, Muhammad Takurufanu, okay? But he also had a different name, which I really liked. I have to search for it. It was something with Ghazi, because I'm a Ghazi, so I really like that. His name was Al Sultan Ghazi Muhammad Bodu Takurufanu, okay? And so he was a freedom fighter. He was like a real freedom fighter. And he basically used guerrilla tactics and had to fight for like 8 years to get the country back. But mashallah, he actually he was able to do that. And when he actually overtook the country, he became the sultan, which I think is really cool. And yeah, so he was then the next sultan, and then the Portuguese had to leave. The thing is, one thing that happened, however, is yeah, so no, actually, that's it. So he also restored the Islamic rule. And yeah, he's celebrated as a national hero. So nowadays, there's still like this holiday around it, which commemorates what he did. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's very inspiring. And I think when Muslims, when we look for like role models in life, this is the type of role model we should look towards and like draw our inspiration from. Like, we don't have to look at other people. We have our own role models. And I think he is one of them. Okay, so please remember his name. His name is Muhammad Takurufanu. I'm sorry, I think it's a bit like I keep forgetting. Muhammad Takurufanu. Okay, so don't forget him. Okay, that's the colonization of the Portuguese. But then there was also a semi colonization of the British, okay, because the British tried to come along. And in 1987, the Maldives became a British protectorate, which actually means they were kind of like colonized. But I guess the British were trying to make it sound better. And it's like colonialism, but like with a twist. And so what happened is they tried to control Maldives foreign policy, because obviously Maldives had such a like beneficial location that it was just very vulnerable to all these imperialists trying to take over. But in 1965, actually, the country regained full independence. But it was a bit sad because some parts of the country did want to remain under the British protectorate, which was a little bit sad, I think. And those parts of the country were Adu, Hufadu, and Fufamula. And so they declared actually independence, and they were called the United Sufadai Republic. Kind of sad. And so when the Maldives got their independence, it was 1959. But 4 years later, these parts that tried to be independent actually came back because they couldn't make it. So I'm like, yeah, you tried though. But like the one thing that happened though is that it was a little bit hard for the Maldives to survive because they didn't have a lot of natural resources. I mean, we don't use those shells anymore as a currency. And so at that time, it was actually, yeah, it was a bit hard for them to survive. But then they actually started focusing on tourism, and then they started booming again. I'm gonna try to talk a little bit slower because actually my driver, Imran, told me today that I talk too fast and that he has trouble listening to my podcast. I said I get so excited, and he was like, then you should be less excited. I was like, okay, anyways. So I'm trying my best. Okay. So, like I said, the Maldives is the smallest Muslim country in the world. And I think that's really cool. They're like so tiny. But, like I also said, they have a lot of integrity. And they're like a Muslim democracy, which is really cool because there's been a lot of pressure on them to actually modernize in the 1990s and the 2000s. But the Maldives stayed very strong, and they didn't succumb to the pressure, because obviously the whole world is going to be like, oh, you're too Muslim, you're too this, you're too that. And like, instead of being like, okay, let me change just to get better economic ties and relations, they were like, no. And they actually doubled down on their Muslim identity and their Muslim rules. And I love them for that. I think like we all need to respect that and learn about them. And there's actually this book written about him. I got it. It's by this professor, a Muslim professor. His name is Sahir, and he actually wrote about Islam and democracy in the Maldives. And in this book, he really outlines how the Maldives did it, because in his book, he mentioned that the Maldives actually had like the most rights for their citizens out of all Muslim countries. And they had Sharia law, they valued their Muslim principles. And I think that's really cool, like they use Sharia for like weddings, for family affairs, for public life, making sure that the vulnerable are protected, but also that people cannot harm themselves or others. And he actually makes a case in his book saying that being a Muslim country doesn't mean that you don't have a strong political system. He says Islam and politics go really well together. He says, in fact, it makes it a stronger political system, mashallah. And I love that so much. Like, I love having learned about that. And that's why I think it's so cool to learn about this country, because not only should we support them as a country, as Muslims, but also we can draw a lot of inspiration from them. And yeah, I hope that when you watch this, that you're like, okay, let me learn a bit more about them. Because you really should, okay? And okay, so basically, they used to be like the Federal Reserve of the Indian Ocean, but at some point they did get into some economic trouble because they didn't have natural resources. They weren't obviously using the cowrie shell as currency anymore. But then, and this was in the 1970s, Maldives actually became a premier tourist destination. And I think everybody knows that. Like, literally everybody knows that because, I mean, it's the Maldives, obviously. And, okay, so what they did is like on all their islands, they just had one resort. And the reason why they did that, and just hear this. The reason why they did that is because they didn't want the tourism to affect their Islamic and religious like culture. I was like, they're such a righteous country. MashaAllah, I'm so proud of them. And so basically that's what they did. One resort per island. And they started, I think in 1972 with Kurumba village. And then by the end of, I think the 1970s, they had 17 resorts, and the Maldives entered the tourism game, and they've been an authority in luxury resort tourism. Let's be honest, they have been. Everybody knows that. And like I said before, I think it's very important for us to support them, to go there as Muslims, to visit these type of countries, okay? Because like I said, they're also under a lot of international pressure, but the history of the country is so beautiful. There's many things you can do there. Like apart from the resorts, you can also like dive deeper into, the freedom fighters, but also the sultans and sultanas they had. And I think even the house of the previous sultana, Khadija, you can visit that, because I think now it's like the judicial palace or something, but still like you can see it. And like the architecture is pretty beautiful. And so, yeah, I mean, for at that time, I think about 28% of the GDP of the Maldives came from tourism. I don't know if it's still like that or if it's more, but I like it. If I would ever go on a holiday, I would definitely go there. But I don't go on holidays, to be honest. Like whenever I have time free, I just go to Mecca. But that doesn't matter. If I ever go on like a beach destination, like holiday, I will go there, inshallah. And we all should go there. Okay. What else can we talk about? Okay, basically, we need to talk a little bit more about the economic situation of the Maldives. Okay, because what happened is that, there was always kind of like a push and pull of the Maldives between China and India. And I think for the longest time, they kind of stuck by India because I think maybe they thought the culture is a little bit the same or something, but they were kind of aligned with India. They maintained very close ties, but that actually changed. Okay, so this changed under the reign of President Abdullah Yamin in 2013, because in his leadership, they joined the China Belt and Road Initiative, which led to a lot of Chinese investment. And so this raised a lot of concern, obviously, because like a lot of countries are really against China, let's be honest. And I guess IMF tried to put pressure on them, saying that they're like concerned, which is kind of like, let's be honest, it's just a front for the US. And also, I think for India, it wasn't really cool because they also realized the importance of the location of the Maldives for their own trade. And so they didn't want this to happen. And so, what's really concerning, however, is that Maldives is struggling a little bit economically. And at some point, India did try to bail them out a little bit by helping them financially. But the issue there is between India and the Maldives is that the Maldives, obviously having like great Islamic values, also notices the anti-Muslim sentiment in India. And so that is also partially the reason why they pulled away from them, because like this country really supports Muslims. It really is proud of being Muslim. And then India is just going down this kind of like they're spiraling out of control when it comes to being they didn't discriminate against Muslims, And so it's no surprise that Maldives actually is aligning more with China these days. And so, I mean, I'm a little bit concerned for them because the thing is, for Western powers, obviously they are against China. And then on top of that, I mean, Maldives is like so badass that they spoke out against Israel, which means they're a huge target. And they're banning Israeli passport holders from even entering the country. And so that makes them a huge target. Like India already spoke out very openly against them and said that all Indians should boycott the Maldives. I think that's crazy, but okay, anyways. And so a lot of Indians did boycott the Maldives actually because tourism from India actually declined by 37%. And I think that's very concerning. And yeah, that's why I think all Muslims, we need to support the Maldives whenever we can go on a holiday. That's where we need to go so that we can make sure that this tiny Muslim nation is staying afloat, like literally. Okay, so that's another thing that I want to tell you. So like when it comes to tourism, I did look up some stats to see like who is coming now to the Maldives the most. And so basically there's no Muslim countries among them. And that's why I'm a little bit disappointed in all of you. Okay. So it's like Russia is number one. They have a 10.6 market share, then Italy, then China, then UK, and then India. And then like in the top 10, there's like no Muslim country. It's like Germany, USA, France, Poland, and Switzerland. I'm like, what is wrong with all of us? That's not cool, okay? So we need to support them, okay? Anyways, that's one of the final things I wanted to discuss with you all. We kind of went through a lot of these parts of the world. Like we've been through Indonesia, we've been through the Americas, we've talked about, some of the, what else did we talk about? Africa, we've been through Africa with the West Mali Empire. We've talked about India. We've talked about the Philippines, which is really cool. And the Maldives is definitely, one out there that we should know about. Like when I said that we need to know about Indonesia, it's like a similar thing because Indonesia is the biggest Muslim country and this is the smallest Muslim country. So that's kind of like noteworthy, I think. And yeah, so basically this is something that I definitely want you all to be aware of. And I literally want people to commit to going to the Maldives. Okay. Like I literally want you to write in the comment section that you're gonna go to the Maldives. Promise it to me because The Maldives is a good country. It is a good country, Savannah. You need to go there, okay? And that's like the final thing I can say. Like, I'm not being paid by the government. I never get paid by any government. Like, I don't work like that, okay? Whenever I say something about any country, about any region, it's becoming like it's something that's like I say from the bottom of my heart because I'm a proud Muslim and I care about my brothers and sisters. And so I will say whatever I feel like saying. I don't care who wants to like not work with me or who thinks I'm like a liar or who thinks I'm like being paid to say things. I don't do that. Okay. Anyways, so my name is Raisa Ghazi. I thank you for watching my podcast again. I want to encourage you to subscribe and also to comment if you think this was cool or if you didn't think it was cool, then please don't comment. So I love to see you again next week, inshallah. And yeah, see you then. Thank you so much.